Hi, this is Kevin from kevinsguides.com, and welcome to the Joomla 4 template development series. So, by the end of this brief series, you will know how to create and style your own Joomla 4 template. A written version of these tutorials and more information on Joomla can be found at my website in the description, kevinsguides.com. The main things we're going to cover in this short series are some essentials with template development, which include an overview of the entire process, along with how to set up a test environment for this Joomla template. Then in the next video, we're going to go over the file structure of the template and the package itself. The third video, I want to talk about index.php and the main layout and style of the template. So that's the video where we're actually going to basically make the template. And then in the fourth video, I want to talk about branding and packaging the template files back up into like a zip archive so we can distribute that and other people can install it on their website. A few extra things, if I have time, I'm going to make a video on template overrides, the web asset manager, which we'll get into a little bit, and how to set up your own custom like template configuration options. So without further ado, let us get started. All right. So some prerequisite skills before you begin. To get through this, you just need to have a basic understanding of HTML and CSS. You don't have to be like a professional or anything. You don't have to know how to do CSS animations and know JavaScript and all that fun stuff. But you should be able to create a static HTML website from scratch with CSS and HTML. So basic styling and basic HTML elements like paragraph tags, divs, classes, that kind of thing. You should understand how to set up Joomla locally and use its key features. So you need to know how to get something like XAMPP or another test environment up and running on your computer, and you have to know how to install Joomla on that test environment. I have a separate video on that subject if you don't know how to do that, but hopefully by now you have at least some Joomla experience so you can do that kind of stuff. And of course, you need a PC you can code on. Then there are some nice to know skills that are not necessarily required, and I will explain most of this stuff. So you don't have to know PHP to get through this, but Joomla templates and Joomla extensions in general are written using PHP. PHP, we can kind of think of that as working with HTML. So most of our code for the actual template is done in HTML and CSS. We don't need a ton of PHP. I'm going to give you all the PHP you need. And basically, we can just kind of like cut and paste and make a few minor changes, but you don't have to be like an experienced programmer or anything to make a template. Now, Joomla uses Bootstrap components, and we'll talk about that in a moment for the layouts of the core extensions and things like that. So if you know how to use Bootstrap, that's nice. If you don't, we'll talk about it a little bit. Using Sass to compile style sheets. Now, the way I created this template, it's based off of the Cassiopeia default Joomla template. And what they do is they use Sass to combine a bunch of different style sheets from Bootstrap and whatever other things they're working on into one minified template.css file. And that's ultimately what gets loaded. So there might be dozens or even hundreds of style sheets, and we use Sass to just kind of merge them together into one concise package for the end user to download. So we don't have to download a million different style sheets onto the user's computer. It's a performance thing and an organizational thing, mainly. There are some other advantages to Sass, but we will get into that in a moment. Now, you don't need JavaScript skills. Actually, we're not going to really do any JavaScript in this series, but if you do know JavaScript or you want to learn JavaScript, that's definitely something that's nice to know. If you want to add more interactive elements or features to your template, JavaScript's definitely something you'll need. So some key terms, we started talking about this already, but Sass, that stands for Synthetically Awesome Style Sheets. They describe it on their website as CSS with superpowers. And as I mentioned a minute ago, our template depends on Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a CSS framework and JavaScript framework, and we need Sass to compile Bootstrap and kind of merge its style sheets with our template. If that doesn't totally make sense yet, it'll make sense in a few minutes and in the next videos when I demonstrate everything. So don't worry if you don't fully understand that yet. If you do already understand all this stuff, you can just go ahead and pretty much skip to the next video. Anyways, Node.js is a JavaScript library that allows us to execute apps written in JavaScript on our PC without the use of a web browser, and we need it to install Sass. So before we can install Sass, we have to have Node.js working. If you already know what Node.js is, good for you. But basically, we're just going to be using Node.js's package manager to install Sass. So we need Sass, or we need Sass, and to get Sass working, we need Node.js. Node.js is a useful thing to have even beyond just using Sass. If you're not familiar with it, it's used commonly in all sorts of development environments. So it's definitely something you should probably understand the basics of. Bootstrap 5, as I mentioned already, the CSS JS framework. We use it to create responsive layouts with standardized components from this kind of like standard library. So it allows all, different Joomla extension developers and the Joomla team to create components and modules and what have you that work on any Joomla website using the same framework. We can customize the way this framework looks, but at the end of the day, it's still the same HTML, CSS framework. So if I create an accordion or a menu or something else using Bootstrap 5, I know that it's going to hopefully work on anyone else's website that also has Bootstrap 5 installed. So we need that. Otherwise, Joomla's core extensions won't be styled or work properly. Things like the page menus and the layouts will look all very, very strange and off. You'd have to go and create a bunch of overrides and custom CSS. It would be a ton of work if you don't want to use Bootstrap 5. It is technically optional, but for this series, we will be using it. And of course, you'll need some type of code editor, and I recommend VS Code or Visual Studio Code. That is a free code app from Microsoft that is pretty commonly used by everyone at this point. So what to do now? So if you don't have Joomla 4 installed on your local PC already, you should pause the video and do that. You should make sure you have a fresh copy of Joomla installed. It's good for our test environments to keep our extensions separate. So if you're creating, one template, you want to have that on a separate Joomla install from, say, another template in general. It's okay to have like one test server and install multiple extensions on that if you want. But for the actual development part, I like to keep it separate. And some other tasks that we will explain, actually, we're going to explain that in this video. We're going to explain how to install the starter template, which is going to be kind of like our base template that we're working off of. It's almost a blank template, but it has a bunch of the core features we need. And I'm going to show you how to install Node.js if you don't already have it, and how to install Sass. So pause the video, get Joomla 4 running on your computer, and install the J4 starter template to begin with. And then beyond that, if you already know Node.js and you already have Sass, you already know how to use that, you can just end the video here. But without further ado, I'm going to get into that, and we will learn how to do all that fun stuff. Okay, so as I mentioned, the first thing you need to do is get Joomla 4 set up, the test environment. Now I've already done this. If you don't know how to do this, go to my website and check out my second chapter of the Intro to Joomla series, or watch the video that I have on setting that up. I use Xampp on Windows. I find that's the easiest way to do it. Then I have all this content available in written form on my website too. So if you want to learn how to do this without watching the video, I have a whole guide on developing a Joomla 4 website, or a Joomla 4, Joomla 4 templates and a Joomla 4 website on my website at kevinsguides.com. And let's take a look at my fresh install of Joomla. So I have Joomla ready to go here. It's a fresh install on my local test server. And let's see, what is going on here? Why is this not working? Joomla Toot. Okay, there we go. So we have logo host, Joomla Toot. So there is my local website. And if I log into administrator, Joom Toot. Log into the administrator here. What I want to do first is install the blog sample data. And the reason I'm doing that is because the blog sample data just comes with like a bunch of test articles and things that we can look at on our website. And once we have that up, it'll make it easier for us to kind of preview things with how our new template looks. If you go back to my website on the downloads page under Joomla and templates, there is a template called J4 Starter, and you can download that package here. And this is basically it's an almost blank template. It has a basic layout to it. We're going to delete the layout and start from scratch, but it has a bunch of core files and like structural things that we need just to make templates work. So download the J4 Starter template, save that, install it on your test site. Same way you would install any extension with the extension manager, just upload that package file. It's installed. And if we go to the system, template styles, we can activate that guy. So if we take a look here, it has some stuff. It has some areas that are set up. You can see the content, but beyond that, you can tell there's really not much to this template. And we're going to fix all this in a bit. But we can see that it's working. So that is set up and ready to go. So we have Joomla set up. We have the J4 starter template set up. The next thing we want to get working is Sass. Before we can get Sass working, we need to get Node.js working. So if you don't have Node.js installed, go to nodejs.org and download the most recent version. And just open that installer. I think I already have it installed on this PC, so basically just next through the installation steps. Just click next at every step. There's no need to change any of the default settings here. But once you have that guy installed and ready to go, we can continue on to setting up Sass. And that is easy enough. So let me just close that since I do already have Node.js working. And what we want to do here is open up a terminal window or command prompt or whatever you want to call it on Windows. PowerShell would work too. And yes, we can close that. Okay. So it looks like I have PowerShell open here. So what file am I in or what folder I'm in here? I'm in my user directory. And what I want to do is just do a command. It doesn't matter actually where I issue this from. So we want to use npm install -g sass. And this is saying use the node package manager. We're asking it to install something globally. That's what that -g is. And we're just asking it to install Sass. So this command is basically saying, hey, node, please install Sass for us. Hit enter. And we can see here, it says change 17 packages. I already have Sass installed on this computer. So it just kind of went through and reviewed everything. But if you have it successfully working here, it should say like added 17 packages. And if you see any like minor warnings, it says like minor updates available or something, you can just ignore that. It might ask you to enter some other commands, but you're just looking for it to say added X number of packages. And if you can see that, then that means it worked. So with Sass working now, what we can do is take a look at let's take a quick look at how Sass works. I have a little demo here. I have a test.scss file, so a Sass style sheet versus a regular style sheet. Now I can't load this using just the web browser, but we can tell that this is very similar to CSS. It's basically CSS with superpowers, as they say on their website. It allows us to create variables. It allows us to have these kind of like nesting structures. And before we actually had native CSS variables, we had to use things like Sass to make variables, and it just simplifies development a little bit. And another advantage here is that it can, like I said, it can combine a bunch of style sheets into one. So it can take like 50 style sheets that are all nice and organized for different sections of our site, combine them into one, and then just send that one file to the end user. That file can be cached and optimized and delivered properly. So they just download that one style sheet and they are set for the entire website. They don't have to go and load a bunch of different style sheets every single time they visit a new page. But I have this test example ready to go here. So I create this variable. It is white, and you don't have to really follow along with this part if you don't want to, but I just want to demonstrate how this works. So I create my variable. It's white. I have a body element. I set the background to this dark blue color. And then within that, I have the CSS class just called test-class. And all that does is it sets the text color to my variable, which again is white. So it's basically just saying set the color to white, add a text decoration of wavy, and that ends that test class. The paragraph colors light blue, and the font size is 3 rem. In my index.html file, I just have a simple heading with that. Actually, I said test class, not text color. So I have a simple h1 heading here with that test class on it. So that should make that white. And then I have a paragraph, and it links to a test.css file. So we have to turn this Sass style sheet into a regular style sheet. And in order to do that, we're going to want to open a command prompt window. If you are in Windows, you can open up Terminal. I'm on my desktop. That's where I have these files at the moment. They're just, sitting there on my desktop. So if I want to turn test.scss into a regular CSS file, I need to open PowerShell or Terminal. I need to change to my desktop folder, which is just cd desktop. And I need to issue the command sass, followed by the original file, which is test.scss, test.css. And all this is saying is use Sass to turn test.scss into test.css. If you run that, you will see that it looks like nothing happened, and that's actually a good sign. Whenever you don't see anything in a command prompt, that normally means everything worked the way it was supposed to. There's no like warnings or issues. I go back to my desktop, and now I have this test.css file that just magically appeared. And let's review what it did here. So it turned my nested tags, and it took this variable. It got rid of all the extra comments that we don't need. And we can see it turned these nested, like I had test class and paragraph in the body element, and it turned those nested structure into a structure that works with CSS, because CSS doesn't support nesting like that out of the box. And where I had that variable name, my variable color, which was set to white for the test class, look at the test class here, we can see that that variable was replaced with its value of white. Now, this other file it generates whenever you run these commands, test.css.map, that's kind of like a map of all the CSS to the SCSS, and the browser's dev tools can use that to kind of help us to find out like where the styles are coming from. So if we're examining the page with the inspector or the dev tools, it will show us, this style in this particular area came from this Sass file. So we can kind of examine that from the dev tools, even though it's not technically loading the actual SCSS files directly into the browser. It's just kind of referencing them for dev purposes. And we'll look at that in a bit as well. I just open that HTML file, make sure it's working, and it is. So I know that Sass worked the way it's intended. Final thing I want to mention here is my sample. So I made a basic layout in Adobe XD here, and we can see this is kind of the layout that I'm going for. It's nothing too crazy. I just want to have a header, a menu going across the top, the You Are Here section that's known as breadcrumbs, content area, and a sidebar, and maybe a footer at the bottom too. So that's the basic desktop layout, but the template's also going to be mobile. So on mobile, we're going to have pretty much the same layout, the header, the menu, the breadcrumbs. It's going to use a toggle that expands using Bootstrap, the content area, then the sidebar, which is on the right in desktop. I'm just going to push that down to the bottom on mobile. And then again, maybe a footer at the very bottom below the sidebar. So that's the layout I'm going for. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at how all the templates files are structured and start looking at a little bit of the actual code. So thanks for watching and sticking with me through this. Hope you found this useful. If you did find it useful, feel free to subscribe or give me a tip on my website. Take care.